And welcome to the first panel discussion about data governance. So I have the pleasure also to introduce my fellow panelists here. So they might come over here. So first we have Aline Muller, who is the CEO of the LISER. LISER is a research institute that specializes in the analysis of socio-economic change. Then we have Max Spielmann, who is government commissioner for data protection to the state, so more from the regulatory aspect. And then we have Patrick Houtsch, the director of CTIE. So he's obviously more in charge of the implementation of everything which is data governance. And then last but not least, the man who's wearing today two hats. First of all, vice chairman of the FEDIL, but also director at Goodyear, Mr. Alex Schumann. You may give a warm applause also to them to warm them up a little bit. Data is definitely something which is ruling the world. It's not only about sovereignty, national sovereignty, but so much more actually. I dare to say that data is ruling the world, and here I'm not beating around the bush. Those who are owning the data, they're owning the world. I'm not thinking now about Google or any other ones who are collecting a lot of data, but in data is a new currency, and data is something which is highly sensitive as well at the same time, and that's why there needs to be rules also about how to handle data, how to protect data, and that's why data governance is something which is so crucial today when we speak about handling data. I would like to start with a little introductory round so that you can get to know our speakers. And Aline, your topic is clearly more from the research perspective. Can you tell us a little bit more why data matters to you?
Data matters to us for research and innovation because it's a true catalyst for the economic and social value that research and innovation can bring to society.
Great. Max, you're more from the regulatory perspective, so why data matters to you?
Well, I think that data, they have high impact because it will be a cornerstone of research and also economic activities on the European level for the years to come. Then it's about fundamental rights, which means that it has high stakes. And then lastly, I think it should be about pragmatic solutions to find that balance between the different fundamental rights, right to privacy on the one hand, but also freedom to conduct a business and freedom to do research on the other hand.
Great. And Patrick, you're the one who's crunching the data from a technical perspective, handling terabytes of data, right?
Yes, right. So for CTIE and for me, data matters because since 50 years, we are hosting databases and applications for the government, for ministries and administrations. And so we are guaranteeing security of the data and what's more important in these days, to offer new tools and modern tools because things evolve and data see somehow a new life, so secondary use. And so our challenge is to offer the best and new technologies actually to work with the data.
I'm not sure if I envy your task, to be honest. Alex, you're more kind of on the practical approach. That means you're representing the sector who's on one hand generating the data, but also using the data.
Yes, indeed. To me, the importance of data is that it can be a real engine for innovation if the data is made available in the right format, the right structure, the right conditions.
Great. Let's dive into the topics. I would like to start with the research because most things start with research, and Aline, you're well positioned for that. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on your interest, first of all, in the law project, which is in the work for the moment, and how the secondary usage of data can have an impact on research initiatives, your research initiatives, but also in a broader topic, and maybe also some concrete examples also.
Yeah, perhaps to start with, I would like perhaps to focus more on what, as a research performing institution and researchers, what we find most attractive in this law project, and it's definitely its intersectoral nature. This capacity to work intersectorally is something which is, of course, extremely attractive and extremely value-creating for research and for society. We can take the example, for instance, of this morning. I think many of us were stuck in a traffic jam. And so luckily, I'm not very often in traffic jams because we are based in Belval. But when I am in a traffic jam, I always think all these people who are daily in a traffic jam. And this creates, of course, a lot of inefficiencies, creates a lot of time which is spent, but it also has a health cost, a social cost, a family life cost, etc., and might have ultimately an impact on productivity in Luxembourg. And when we think about it and we try to find the origin, we might be directly or indirectly influenced by the choice that was made at the very origin, and that might have a link with the housing market. And that's, I think, something what we have to be aware is that when markets are imperfect, they create inefficiencies, and they create inefficiencies not only in their sector, but also in other sectors. And that's something which is, from an economic perspective, as for economists, extremely interesting to study and to understand actually how we can improve productivity, how we can improve competitivity, attractivity, by looking at the problem in an intersectoral manner. This multidimensionality is something which, through the interconnection of data, can be understood. Of course, we cannot, if we would, if in the optimal case we would start Luxembourg from scratch and organize economic activity and housing and social life differently. But given that we cannot start from scratch, we have to understand the current situation, and that we can do by using the different data sets and interconnecting them.
When you speak about interconnecting, can you just give me a couple of ideas and hints about the opportunities and the challenges that interconnecting databases brings with?
I think I will leave the challenges to Max, and I will speak more about the opportunities. Data for researchers is something magic, because there is the beauty of, through interconnecting data, by letting data speak to each other, to make it actually richer and richer. By interconnecting the data, we can improve not only the quality, we can test, we can control and clean the data better, but we can also increase its informational content. And that's at the stage and now at the phase of AI is crucial, because the better data you put in AI, the more outcome you can get out of it.
You mentioned before already the housing sector. I mean, that's something which I find personally quite exciting, because how can the effective use now of data sets contribute to better understanding of the complexity, for example, of the interdependence between housing, employees, migration dynamics in Luxembourg? That's an interesting interconnection. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
It's all about attractivity. So we see it here. I think the future and the ways for the future will depend also on our attractivity in terms of talents. And in migration terms, of course, the migrant and the most talented migrant will go where it's most attractive. But attractivity is something which is extremely subtle, and very often you notice that you are unattractive when it's already too late. And that's where I think, in terms of policy making, it's crucial to work on the attractivity in its multidimensional feature by building policy making and designing policy in a coherent and efficient way. Coherent first, because, as I said, by working on housing, you have an impact on employment, you have an impact on competitivity, and you have an impact on social life and social cohesion. But also because, in terms of efficiency, because of course we know that means are not endless, and in order to have really informed policies that really have an impact, we have to evaluate, test, and control the impact, and that we can do with data.
That makes perfect sense, which brings me also to Max. Thank you very much, Aline. Impact on the policies of the lawmakers, actually. So, Max, you're more from the regulatory side. So how does the Data Governance Act, the DGA, how does it aim to harmonize procedures across different sectors in Luxembourg, which is a very important topic? And what are the implications that this does bring also on the regulatory compliance?
Well, I think Aline gave a very good example, and also the importance that data can speak to each other to create additional value and also to to ensure secondary effects on the economy, research, but also on policy making. And I just want to say that a lot of people think that data protection is an absolute right, which is it is not. Data protection is certainly a fundamental right, but it has to be put in balance with other fundamental rights, like I said during my previous remarks. And I think this is the rationale behind the Data Governance Act. It is to, on the one hand, still protect personal data and the right to private life of citizens, but on the other hand, also to make sure that data can be reused in the best possible way. And it is that balance that also the Luxembourg government tried to put into music by using the possibility foreseen in the DGA to have a central body who is in charge of granting accesses for reuse of public sector data. And in that way, we, as Luxembourg, we have a coherent approach, because it will not be, like Aline said, a lot of data come from different sources, which creates legal uncertainty. By having one central body, we give legal certainty in that way in order to facilitate reuse of data. But I think that the DGA is only one cornerstone. It is one very important cornerstone, but I think also, like it was set out in the National Data Strategy, it is just the first piece, and there will be more sectorial regulations as regards data reuses, secondary uses of data, for example, public health data, in accordance with the European Health Data Space regulation, but also other sectorial regulations. And there it is foreseen in the national strategy that all the procedures will be aligned in order to facilitate reuses of data. This means in practice that afterwards one has one central body who will be in charge, one file, one authorization, and then afterwards one can reuse data. I will come back to the conditions in a minute. But so Luxembourg will position itself as a data hub when it comes to secondary uses of data, because we only need one authorization, we have one procedure, while in other member states there will be several authorizations for the same research project, for example. Then again, I come back to the conditions. It is not that the DGA foresees that one can just share and reuse data. There are conditions that are foreseen, the principle of purpose limitation, data minimization, but also pseudonymization, for example, which means that one can extract data, the value of the data, sorry, but never extract the data itself and never re-identify the persons behind it. So the rights of the citizens and of the people are respected, while the economy and researchers can extract the value of the data. One last important part of this is that we will have in place a secure processing environment, meaning that the data will be combined in that processing environment. One can work with the data, but one can never extract the data, which is a very high security measure for hindering any abuses when it comes to data usage.
When it comes to some practical examples, you say about the fundamental right of data protection, which is quite interesting. It makes me think right away of the medical sector, also patient data, etc. Can you share maybe a couple of examples, or one example which illustrates a little bit this data protection and correlation of different data?
Yes, I would, before I come to the health data, maybe just to give feedback on also what Aline said, it's a very good example, because if you look at the housing market, traffic jams, data often come from different sources. So you need to combine those data in order to get the value out of it. And that's one concrete example. When you now look at health data, if you look at medical images, for example, how doctors evaluate those images like ERMs or radiology, for example, you have doctors working with the data. Doctors are gaining a certain sum of money each month, so you have financial records in a sort. They have to move from home to their work, so you have traffic jams and housing in it. So you have different sets of data which fall under different regulations. Like I said, you have the DGA, you have European Health Data Space, but you also have other data spaces that will come in the future. And then if you use, for example, those data to evaluate whether an AI could help doctors to evaluate, for example, cancer more easily, then you also fall under the AI Act. And that's the reason why it is very important to to have that one procedure, one authorizing body, and also one secure processing environment, because in a sort you hide the complexity, legal complexity behind the text, because the applicant, who is often not a legal legal expert, can introduce one request and then get one authorization and work in one secure processing environment with those data, so you get the value out in a quite flexible manner.
If I think about all the complexity, I think also about Clarence, which is an interesting tech stack from Google also that you're using. Let's speak a little bit about that before Patrick is diving into the technical implementation of that. So what for you are the key regulatory challenges which are associated also with managing the data access and authorizations while also ensuring the compliance with data protection laws? And this with maybe also an eye on Clarence.
That's a tricky question. I will start with the GDPR, because in the GDPR it's foreseen that you have, as a data controller, to put into place security measures. And here, maybe Patrick can elaborate on that a little bit further in the next minutes. But Clarence and also the secure processing environment put into place by the CTIE grants, on the one hand, that you cannot extract data. Like I said, as a researcher, for example, you cannot reuse that same data set and combine it in your own environment later on with other data that you have. But the second pillar is that it is also a solution that is, while it gives you the maximum services of hyperscalers, also air-gapped, meaning that it is very secure in a way that data cannot get out of the secure processing environment of the Luxembourg state.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Max. Patrick, your task is also the technical architecture, to implement the technical architecture of Clarence. Maybe you can explain in a couple of words what it means, Clarence, this Google tech stack, and what is so special with the data handling, especially for Luxembourg also.
Yes, so Clarence, it's not only about Clarence. So there are a lot of steps before the data comes into Clarence, actually. And what has been told before actually shows also that we are looking for efficiency. So we are looking for one body that handles access requests, and we are trying to make things efficient and fast. And that's also the reason why we try to centralize the tooling at CTIE. The other reason is so that the data stays at the government and that we keep control of the data. So, and actually what we do is we are setting up a platform for preparing data, so which is a very important step. So collecting the data from the different sources that are mostly, when it's public sector data, hosted at CTIE. So, and that's already, let's say, an advantage that we have in Luxembourg, that we have a centralized IT for the government. So it's quite easy to interconnect things for us. So we interconnect the stuff. We also retrieve the data that comes from outside. The first steps is about pseudonymization. We do this normally at source. So it's important because we, if possible, we do not want to have the clear data totally in our databases. So we pseudonymize on source if it's possible. We get the data, and then there's a complete architecture and infrastructure to handle the data and to prepare the data, and this is done by data engineers. And once this is done, the data is combined and it's cleaned and so on and so on. And in the end, maybe it's also anonymized, or even we create synthetic data. And that's the last step before the data enters into the secure processing environment, and that's where it enters Clarence, actually. Mm-hmm. So Clarence is for us, let's say, it was quite an easy way to have access to modern tools. We have a platform which is called GovCloud, so where actually we store the data and we handle the data, but when it comes to modern tooling, it's quite challenging to follow the speed of the evolution and innovation, to have always the modern tools in our GovCloud. So, and that was the idea, to say, okay, there we have access to hyperscaler technology and also to an environment that's separated from what we have today, that's completely closed. The actually data is injected into projects. Those projects are isolated and nothing comes out of the projects.
everything at the end of the day, if you want to provide the data to different ongoing projects, starts with a catalog also. But how, first of all, you set up such a catalog, and second also, how do you make sure also that the data which is given to the ongoing projects secure and anonymous?
So the catalog part, and that's a huge task actually. So we work with LNDS together, and actually it's the Ministry of Digitalization who is in charge of publishing the catalog. And there the idea is to collect, let's say to create catalogs at the different data sources, and to create a system where we can put together these catalogs and create one central catalog who is then published. So that's the basic idea. I think technically it's not that complicated, but it's more like it's work to do, and we have to go to all the databases and the data sets and see what's inside and so on and so on.
About the once only rule, that's quite an interesting rule where I'm not sure if everybody in the audience also knows what it means. But how, first of all, what is the once only rule? And second, how does it impact also the development of tools like Clarence, and also in general, the overall management of data within the CTIE?
So the once only topic is quite separate from DGA. It's more like on the primary use of the data. And the idea is that if the government holds a data set that's necessary on another place somehow, actually you go and get it. And it's always related to when a citizen actually starts, how to say, a process with the government, and he needs to feed information in, and the government has this information, we will go and retrieve it somewhere else. And the challenge is to interconnect all those databases and to be able to go and get information.
When we speak about getting information, then I look already at Alex, because you are the one who wants to have the information, but you're providing also information. So you are more working in the automobile sector, which is quite an interesting example also for data usage and data creation also. So question to you, what specific sector-focused solutions do you believe are necessary for effective data governance in industry, exactly like the automotive sector? And how do you think, or how do you feel that they can be implemented?
So yes, indeed, it's a good question for us also in Luxembourg. And when I hear what you have said so far, it's positive, right? Because I'll give you an example. First, what we talk about and what the issue is. When you have a mobile application or you're downloading an application, you basically consent to share data, not to share data, but it's available in general to the one who developed the application. In the automotive industry, that's not the case. Many suppliers provide either parts for the vehicle, or they provide actually sensors directly. But in any case, we provide a lot of sensors that create data, but that data is not made accessible to whoever is supplying those components. So in general, when you buy a new car today, you do the same then with your app. You consent to share or you don't. But that data is not available to those who are participating in the vehicle infrastructure. And that is why we say we need a sector-specific solution for the automotive sector, because it's the way it is built today, the data is not available to those who need it, and it just hinders innovation.
But when you say that each manufacturer basically collects its own data, that means we have different silos, I would say. How can you encourage also the manufacturers to provide these data and to make sure that these data can be shared also in most likely an anonymous way as well?
Yes, I think what will be important for the car manufacturers, for the OEMs, is that they can be sure that their trade secrets are kept, that their intellectual property is guaranteed, right? And that's why I like so much what you've said, because we also talk about standardization, because Stellantis and Volvo, whoever, they are not having the same data structure. So we need, what you said, either a catalog or standardization, and we need to make sure we have a trustworthy and secure environment to stock that data. Now that, I think, a chance for Luxembourg could be that we could be a first place for such a platform, maybe even to work towards with our automotive suppliers in Luxembourg to see what needs to happen in order to make it worthwhile for OEMs to share their data. And maybe just a word on the automotive sector in Luxembourg. There's dozens of suppliers, in case you wonder. And there's 9,000 employees, jobs, but of those 9,000, 2,000 are in R&D. Right, so there's a big automotive R&D community in Luxembourg, and it would be great if we could really enhance that development with making sure that we create an environment where OEMs would be willing to share data.
I wanted to circle back to the Data Act also. So how do you assess for the moment the clarity and the effectiveness of the current Data Act? And what do you think are the further steps which are needed to define the roles of the authorities in data governance?
When we talk about the automotive industry, or what is collected from the vehicles, we're talking about mixed data. We're talking about pure technical data, sensor data, vehicle data, but we're also talking about personal data. You mentioned the traffic jam. So from all the things you mentioned, probably the only information you won't be able to get is the information from the car, right? And also because it's sensitive information. How's the driver driving? How's he behaving? Where's he looking? All those personal information is mixed with technical information from the sensors. That's why it's important. We do not only look at the Data Governance Act, but we also look at GDPR. And I think that's a great potential if we have one framework that fits all those, or that includes all the compliance related to those acts.
Sounds like a giant task actually to harmonize everything, to bring everything together, but definitely the best way also to position Luxembourg also inside of Europe as kind of a data leader, I would say. Let's come to a last round where I would like you to become maybe a little bit more personal also about what you feel or how you feel that data actually should be handled, or what your future expectations are. Aline, I'm pretty sure you have a couple of thoughts about this as well.
Yeah, I'm terribly enthusiastic, but I will do the metaphor. A single neuron doesn't, of course, is essential and carries a signal, but it's when you connect the neurons, when they speak to each other, that intelligence starts to begin and emerge. And that's also with data sets. When you connect data sets across dimension and cross sectors, they start to speak and the data start really to fire and to create collective intelligence. And that's, I think, where research can be also a catalyst, a driving force in assisting and supporting society in creating this collective intelligence. And I'm very much looking forward to it.
Makes me think a little bit of the old term of swarm intelligence, which comes actually back to that. So, Max, we haven't been speaking actually of AI too much, so which is interesting. So we speak about data, but data AI. So I don't want to anticipate now your answer, but what is your take on general or outlook for data, Luxembourg, etc.?
I think data and AI, it's the chicken and egg question. You can't have AI without data, and you can't use data without AI. So I think it's important to have a coherent approach as regards to that. And when it comes to the outcome, I echo what Aline said. I'm very optimistic for mainly two reasons. I think that we have a very good collaboration. Patrick mentioned CTIE, LNDS, but also the Ministry for Digitalization, FEDIL, research sector. A lot of people are speaking together, have the same thoughts, and that's the second part of my answer. I'm very optimistic because everybody has the same goal. It's about facilitating reuse of data, use of AI, development of AI and data services, while on the other hand, always, and it's very important, protecting fundamental rights, which not only includes personal data, but also, like you said, intellectual property rights, etc., trade secrets. It's everything combined, and that's very positive, I think.
Great. Patrick, your take on data, an outlook maybe?
Well, I think, of course, there is no doubt that there's an enormous potential in using data, otherwise than it has been used before, because it has been used in silos, and I have seen this during many, many years where we have set up BI platforms and so on. And this has changed in the last years. So where we want to combine data and to create, there's a huge value inside this data. And for me, what's important is, like I said before, the efficiency, so that we create systems that are industrialized, that we can quickly provide data and give secure access. Of course, security is something that I think we handle well, but efficiency, to make the processes, to streamline the processes, and to make everything run smooth and automate everything that can be automated. That's the key, so that actually the good ideas that are there to work with the data can actually really come to life.
Perfect. And Alex, you almost have the final words.
Yes, and it's all been said, right? Because we have not spoken about AI because it's the obvious, right? There's no sense in collecting data from different sources if you don't do anything with it. And the data is so big, the only way to work with it is AI. So that said, I think if we, and specifically for Luxembourg, if we are able to create clear, transparent rules, simple rules, we create this trustworthy and secure environment, and then we make it possible to have fair access to all players to the data that we have, then it can really building an ecosystem, right? Rather than just talking about a regulation, we can really have maybe another ecosystem here in Luxembourg that we can start to build. So really positive about also what I heard today.
Great, thank you very much, Alex. Well, data is the foundation for basically everything, which applies also to the future of work, which is going to be the topic of the next panel, which is coming up in a few. So thank you very much to my panelists. A very warm applause also to all of them for all the interesting information.